The pandemic has sparked renewed interest in universal basic income. What is universal basic income, and is it good for the economy? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Surfshark. You should be using a VPN like Surfshark to protect yourself whenever you go online. So, Universal Basic Income, or UBI for short. You may have heard of it, especially around the 2020 presidential election. Democratic candidate Andrew Yang made it the central part of his platform.
This universal basic income would be the greatest catalyst to entrepreneurship and creativity that we've ever seen.
Andrew Yang was the UBI guy, kind of the way Bernie Sanders was the free college guy, and Beto O'Rourke was the dork on the skateboard who lost to Ted Cruz guy. Can't believe he didn't win with such a strong platform. As for universal basic income, eventually Andrew Yang started calling it a freedom dividend, which makes it sound so much more American. Just like freedom fries or freedom toast. Both of those tasted so much more American after they were renamed, don't you think? Even though they weren't actually free and didn't give you freedom, or represent anything really, except that we hate the French. Yang isn't alone in thinking universal basic income is the wave of the future.
We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
New ideas? I won't have a choice. Oh, does this mean UBI currency is going to be in Dogecoin? It's universal because it's going to the moon. According to some polls, more than half of Americans support UBI. Thanks to COVID and the pandemic, the popularity of UBI is rising. I guess the taste of free money from all those stimulus checks left people wanting more. Which is surprising. How have people not been able to stretch out that first $1,200 stimmy for the last 2 years? Probably all these millennials buying their avocado phones and cell toast. So what is universal basic income? And how is it different from guaranteed basic income? Universal basic income is regular, unconditional cash payments to every adult citizen, regardless of their income or their employment status. Under Andrew Yang's plan, every American would receive $1,000 a month, which adds up to $12,000 a year. $12,000! That's enough money to last 20 years. If you're not a dumb millennial, of course, wasting it on Starflix and Netbucks. By one estimate, Yang's plan would cost the U.S. government $4 trillion a year, which is almost equal to the federal government's entire revenue in 2021. That's all of our taxes and then some. Universal basic income is different from guaranteed basic income, which is designed only for the poor. One of the criticisms of universal basic income is its universality, which means every adult would be paid regardless of how wealthy they are. That includes billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, who definitely don't need the cash. Although, maybe a little extra cash would encourage Musk to splurge on a decent haircut, or Zuck for a fridge for his barbecue sauce. But most people who advocate for UBI favor a conditions-based approach. They typically want to target unemployed or low-income groups who need the cash the most. Today, there are cities all over the country with politicians who are experimenting with cash payments to citizens. Mayors for Guaranteed Income lists over 60 mayors in its coalition, although only 15 of those mayors have actually started programs. Chicago, which is not part of the coalition, recently passed a budget with what the mayor calls one of the country's largest universal basic income programs. It's estimated costs $35 million and is being funded partially by some $2 billion the city received in federal COVID relief money. It plans to give $500 a month to 5,000 randomly selected adults who make less than $35,000 a year. So technically, it's not universal basic income. It's only $500 a month, and no one can live on that in Chicago. And it's not universal because it's only for 5,000 people selected in a lottery in a city of over 2 million. Geez, as if the poor needed another lottery to needlessly get their hopes up on. But at any rate, the idea of UBI is becoming trendy. The question is, does it work? I'll have more on that after the break. Welcome back. Proponents of universal basic income say there should be a program for it at the national level. After all, the US sort of had one by giving out cash in response to COVID, so why not make it permanent? Many critics argue that distributing cash payments to everyone would make people less likely to work. It's too costly for governments to sustain and has similar objectives as already existing social welfare programs. And many fear will increase inflation as well. Getting an extra $500 a month doesn't help when Starflix suddenly costs $900 a cup or stream. I'll be honest, I'm not sure what that is. So what does the research say? A review of 165 studies in the Cambridge Journal of Social Policy found that cash assistance didn't make people work less. A 2015 study by Harvard and MIT researchers found that cash transfer programs in developing countries also don't discourage work. That shouldn't be a surprise, though, because most cash payment programs don't hand out enough to live on. They're really just helping people afford extra expenses. Unless you're a time traveler and you can go back to when $500 a month was a lot. But of course, life back then sucked because they hadn't invented Starflix. So how have UBI programs fared in places they've been used? There are too many to cover all of them, but here are the results of a few. The poster child for UBI was a 2019 experiment in Stockton, California. For 2 years, it gave 125 citizens $500 per month, with no strings attached, meaning that the cash was unconditional and without work requirements. A study by its designers 1 year later found that full-time employment among recipients increased, their emotional health improved, and the cash payments helped with financial issues. These are all good things, and none of them should come as a surprise because we're talking about free money here. The only other thing that makes you feel that good after getting it, well, I'm not sure how the government would be able to send that through the mail. Of course, I'm talking about hugs from your mom. Aww. But the study also had its drawbacks. For one, it only lasted 2 years, so it doesn't tell us what effects a longer-term program would have had. After the program ended, it was never renewed, and the mayor who implemented it lost his re-election bid, which means he had to have been the worst mayor of all time. How do you lose an election when you've been handing out $500 checks monthly for 2 years? Of course, his experiment had a very small sample size, so the benefits or drawbacks of a truly universal program would be hard to understand from this pilot. For example, we can't tell from this study what effect a universal program would have had on inflation. For more on inflation and how it works and why it's an issue right now, check out the video we did here. We also don't know what effect the cash payments had on people's spending habits. Did they spend the money on alcohol and cigarettes? Or did they use it to buy groceries and fill prescriptions? That is an important question in determining the success of any program that hands out free money, and the study didn't answer it. It also didn't answer what gifts they got their significant others on Valentine's Day. You got an extra $500 this month, and all you bought me was a stuffed bear from CVS and a gift card to Denny's? This experiment is a failure, and so is our relationship. But probably the most glaring problem with the experiment is that it didn't have sustainable funding. That's the biggest hurdle to any UBI program. The project was financed through several charitable grants with no money from the government. When those grants ended, so did the program. And after the break, we'll look at some more experiments with cash payments and how they fared. Not all of them did so well. Welcome back. Universal basic income experiments have been carried out all throughout the world. An experiment in Namibia was carried out over 4 years in 2 neighboring villages. After 1 year, it was declared a success by supporters of UBI. They said it reduced poverty, malnutrition, and crime. But the experiment only targeted 2 villages, which had 1,000 to 1,200 residents. It also didn't have a control group, so it's hard to know if the benefits of the program were because of the cash payments or if they were part of a national trend. Eventually, the program ran out of money. The payments became sporadic and then stopped. In the end, we don't have much reliable information on the results of this program because the project organizers didn't make the data public or cooperate with other independent researchers. It's easy to declare an experiment a success when you don't let anyone examine the results. Kind of like my successful experiment breeding an octopus with a tarantula to make a 16-legged aquatic nightmare beast. But you're not allowed to see it. As in the Stockton, California case, the program also was being funded by charities. Despite its reported success, the Namibian government never adopted the program. Over in Europe, Finland conducted an experiment from 2017 to 2018, in which the government handed out about $640 a month to 2,000 unemployed residents. These residents were already receiving government help. The program was originally supposed to give 10,000 people about $1,100 a month, but it shrunk because of budget restraints. The study found that recipients were happier, but many remained unemployed. A similar experiment was carried out in Ontario, Canada. The government gave monthly payments to 4,000 low-income people. The program, which cost 115 million Canadian dollars, was supposed to go on for 3 years, but it got cancelled less than a year in. Something everyone loved that was cancelled way too soon? Oh man, it's Firefly all over again. Firefly was cancelled so aggressively that even its creator got cancelled. The Social Services Minister at the time said it was just too expensive, which might be part of it, but also the more liberal political party that implemented the UBI program lost an election to a more conservative party, which cancelled it. Still, it's true that universal basic income is expensive, which makes it hard to implement nationwide. But there have been a few countries that have tried it. Iran is one of them. It sort of stumbled into doing this after some commodity prices spiked in 2010. The government initially tried to target lower-income families with cash payments after heavy cuts to gas and bread subsidies. Identifying low-income families who were qualified was a challenge, so the Iranian government just decided to make the payments universal. Wow. It's nice to see an Iran deal that doesn't make everyone nervous. Research on Iran's nationwide cash transfer policy found that people overall didn't stop working. But it didn't help long-term either. While it staved off the worst effects of the subsidy cuts, it led to high inflation that caused social unrest later on. So, no long-term benefits, just inflation and unrest. And I think we have enough of that in America right now, thank you very much. But the biggest success story that UBI advocates point to is Alaska. Since 1982, Alaska has operated a permanent fund dividend, using oil revenues to pay royalties to every man, woman, and child. Research from the University of Chicago suggests that it wasn't causing people to leave the workforce. But it did find the number of Alaskans working part-time increased by almost 20%. The researchers couldn't tell whether these were people who used to work full-time, now working part-time, or whether they were people who were unemployed and now working part-time. The study also said more research needed to be done on how the payments affected the price of goods, or, in economic terms, inflation. Ultimately, UBI is like dating a gold digger. It's an attractive idea, seems like fun, and won't necessarily lead you to quitting your job, but there's just too much we don't know about it, and it's too expensive to maintain long term. At least not without charitable donations from others. So what do you think? Should the US implement a UBI program? Leave your comments below. And this episode has been sponsored by Surfshark. Because if you want to access the internet without being constantly monitored by the government or giant corporations, you should hide your internet activity with a VPN, like Surfshark. Surfshark has uncrackable encryption and the most secure VPN protocols. With IP and DNS leak protection, the government can't tell where you're really connecting from, and neither can your internet service provider. And Surfshark also protects you by not keeping logs of what you do online. That's why using a VPN like Surfshark is a key part of protecting yourself whenever you go on the internet. So use Surfshark. And with just one Surfshark account, you can connect as many devices as you want. So try it out. Surfshark has a special deal going on right now that includes 83% off a 2-year plan plus 3 extra months for free. Go to surfshark.com/uncovered and use the code UNCOVERED to get their deal that includes 3 extra months for free. Use the link in the description below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.